everyone. Welcome to the May 20th, 2024 Operations Management Budget and Government Accountability Committee meeting. I am Councilman Amilcar Hernandez, and I am chair of this committee. This meeting is broadcasting live on HPA-TV's Xfinity Government Channel 96 and Frontier Government Channel 6032. It will also be streamed via hpa-tv.org, the HPA-TV Facebook page, and HPA-TV Apple TV, Amazon TV, and Roku TV apps. It will also be made available on the HPA-TV YouTube channel. I'd like to start by introducing some of my colleagues that are here present. We have with us voting member John Gale, voting member Council President Surgeon. We also have here representing Hartford Parking Authority CEO Jill Turlo and our Director of Finance CFO Leanne Rawls. We are going to immediately start with, we have 5 items on the agenda, I believe. Let me see. Yeah, 5 items in the agenda. So we are going to start right away with the first item on the agenda. Item 2.1, it's Mayor Arulampalan with accompanying ordinance amending the anti-blight and property maintenance program. For this item, we had a discussion on this on Monday, April 15, just before the public hearing. So at this point, I will just open the floor to see if any of my colleagues have any discussions or any comments regarding this change of ordinance. And if not, I will entertain a motion for this particular item. Do I have any of my colleagues with any questions?
I'm just reviewing it, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, sure.
I'm recalling now, the design of this was to increase the fines. And this was at the request of administration, increasing certain fines from, looks like from $100 to $150, and others were going up to $250. And I do recall that we were supportive, so I would certainly move that we send this back to council with a favorable recommendation.
Okay. Well, I second. Any other discussions? So we'll take a vote to send it back with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against it? All right. So let the record show that item 2.1 will be sent back to council with a favorable recommendation. A real quick question, with 3 members, we do have a quorum, correct? With 3 members?
Two members is a quorum.
Yeah, okay.
Under our rules.
Got it. Item 2.2, it's Mayor Arulampalan with accompanying resolution authorizing the submission of the list of programs eligible for the 2024 Neighborhood Act tax credit program to the Connecticut Department of Revenue Services. We just recently had a public hearing on this item. And is Julian, okay, Julian intended to be present in case anybody had any questions. But we just recently had a public hearing on this on May 9th. I wonder if anybody of my colleagues have any questions or any concerns about this particular item. If not, I'll entertain a motion as well.
I'll move to send this back to council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
Okay, motion properly made, properly second. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Let the record show that we're sending item 2.2 back to council with a favorable recommendation. Now moving on to item 2.3, Councilwoman Mary Rosado, Councilman John Gale, Councilman Josh Micton, resolution of the Hartford Court of Common Council to review and amending handicap parking policies and meter charges in collaboration with the Hartford Parking Authority and disability rights organizations. So with us tonight, we have our Hartford Parking Authority CEO, Jill Turlo. Jill Turlo, the floor is yours.
I don't know if I'm visible.
We see a gray screen with like a little computer icon.
All right, well, I am not going to worry about that excessively. Am I able to share? I am. Excellent. Okay. So I'm just going to start preemptively by stating that I recognize that this was not required of me to set up a slideshow, but I didn't really see a good way for me to talk about this without me putting in some time and research in advance. So I thought as long as I was already making the phone calls and having the discussions, I might as well bring what information I have right now.
Well, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course. So the first thing that I did is I actually looked at the Connecticut general statutes. And then I, spoke with Corporation Counsel at the city of Hartford to get an understanding of how they're interpreting it. So right now, the Connecticut general statute essentially says that someone with a valid ADA permit is able to park for an unlimited period of time without penalty, notwithstanding the period of time indicated as lawful by any parking meter or sign erected and maintained. The way that that is being interpreted by City of Hartford Corporation Counsel, as well as the City of New Haven's disability law expert, was that it permits parking authorities to charge for parking, essentially. I also spoke to it's actually not the former CEO, the two CEOs previous, Eric Boone, who was the person that was in charge at the time that the decision was made to charge for metered parking for people with valid ADA permits. And I just put this in as a little bit of a placeholder, but he actually did come to the HPA office and spoke with me. The general information that I was able to get from him is essentially that there was a significant amount of abuse in Hartford of people that were using ADA placards that weren't valid or that were being misappropriated or misused. And that he had at that point in time engaged with disability rights organizations about the issue. And that essentially the concern that he understood was that it was much more about accessibility than it was about the meter payments. And that's something that I've actually seen echoed a lot in some of the other conversations I've had on this matter over the last few weeks. So I called New Haven, and I spoke with Gretchen, and I might pronounce her last name wrong, Knopf. She's the director of the Office of Services for Persons with Disabilities, and she actually stated in New Haven, the way that they currently handle it is they do have accessible metered spaces. They require people to pay for them. The rate is the same, but the sort of the change that they make is that they don't have a maximum time limit. So in an area in Hartford right now, if we have a 10-hour space, it might have a maximum time of 2 hours. The way that New Haven would handle that is even if someone without an ADA permit can only be there for 2 hours, if you have an ADA permit and therefore you select that option on the meter, it would let you park and pay for up to that entire time. So that's the way that they are interpreting and handling that. I reached out to quite a few different cities to understand how they're handling it. So in Middletown, their designated handicap spaces are currently unmetered, but if you park at a metered space that isn't designated handicap, they do expect you to pay the meter at that location. They actually told me that they are currently in the process of considering a change to that system, and they're looking at moving to something, from what I was told today, it looks like they're moving to something that's a little bit more like what New Haven is doing. In the city of Bridgeport, they apparently do not have metered locations with designated handicap, as far as I was able to tell. But they said that if somebody parks in one of those metered spaces, even if it's not designated for handicap, they would have to pay the same charges as any other individual. City of Stamford, they have someone that is a valid ADA permit is exempt from parking fees for on-street or parking lots. However, if you park in a city-owned garage, you're required to make payment. And West Hartford does something similar. If you park on street in West Hartford and you're parked in designated spot, you do not have to pay the on-street meter fees. So I just wanted to get an idea of how all of the other municipalities in Connecticut are sort of interpreting the general statute and what they're doing. And honestly, the answer seems to be that there are definitely some different interpretations. I also reached out to a few different people and organizations. So I spoke with Kay Taylor, who is the director of the Office of Equity and Inclusion. And she had sort of reiterated the same thing I heard from Eric Boone, that accessibility was the issue rather than the cost. She also indicated to me that we should not make the assumption regarding the socioeconomic status of someone based on their disability. Mm-hmm. And in fact, that assumption is often perceived as being offensive or insulting. That is something that I also found echoed a few times in having these conversations. I do not have a slide for the ADACC, which is the ADA Coalition of Connecticut. I sort of went over to her what I had spoken with all these different organizations, and she really just echoed those same sorts of thoughts, that it's more about accessibility. and that she understood that sort of removing that time limitation as being a valuable option. Today, I actually had a phone call with Jason Angel. He works for the New England ADA Center. And he really did not want to provide me an opinion on whether or not to charge. He said it was really down to the municipality, what they want to do. I kind of pushed on that a little bit to be like, is there a recommendation? Is there something that's better? And I'm guessing as an organizational stance, they might be choosing not to make a recommendation because he really didn't seem to be willing to make one in either direction. But he did mention, and I used a quote there, the massive amount of abuse that people will do to take advantage of free parking. I did all this research, a lot of which was essentially what the resolution was sort of asking for. And I would like to be very clear to state that I am not assuming that I know what the right answer is. I just wanted to give this information to City Council that sort of I had been able to gather so that you would have the ability to look at what's currently in place and think of whether there might be a positive adjustment in Hartford. And again, if there is more research that you'd like me to do or other organizations, I'd be happy to do so. That is my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Ulo, for this presentation and for putting that PowerPoint. It's very helpful to see the visuals and be able to read. Do I have any colleagues with any questions, any comments for Mr. Ulo?
Sure. Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is, for how does the parking authority determine the number of accessible parking space per street? Is there a...
There
I'm
is
sorry, go ahead.
some ruling about that. I had not pulled that up. I was really focusing on the meter payment for this, but there are certain number of requirements. And if that is a concern, that's definitely something that we could start a process of looking at throughout the city.
No, I'm just really curious to see, the city's ruling or requirements, for the number. I don't know what those will be, but do you believe the city is following those rules or requirement for accessibility? If there's regular, 10 parking space, is it mandated that you have one or two, for handicap parking?
I will say we started the process of reviewing all of our off-street facilities. One of the members of Corporation Council that we work with, Natalie, had actually recommended that a couple months ago before this even came up. And she was sort of just looking at our facilities. So we were going through and we've been taking measurements and making sure our off-street facilities are compliant. But I have not done any research into the on-street quantities and what those requirements are. Again, I would be happy to start doing that if that would be helpful, but I don't have that information available.
And I'm just curious, I mean, you see the different off-street accessibility park, because of course, there is the handicap, symbol, but, how does the parking authority, determine, should I put 3 here or 2 here? I didn't know if there was, a rule that the parking authority or the policy of the parking authority does have a policy on that. Or is there one for New Haven, Bridgeport, or anywhere else?
I know for off-street specifically, I have the whole ADA standards guide. And again, Natalie at Corporation Council had shared that with me. And that's what we've been using. But I don't think it specifies, at least the specific link that she gave me doesn't seem to speak about on-street. It seems to be specifically for facilities. So for instance, if you have 1 to 25 total spaces, you need 1 van accessible space. Or if it's 26 to 50, you need 1 standard, 1 van accessible. But I don't think it specifies for on-street. That's definitely something I could look into.
Just curious, if you don't mind, what other urban areas are doing.
Yeah, I'd be happy to look into that.
Thank you. Do we have any other colleague with any other questions for Mr. Ulo?
Councilman Hernandez, if I may, through you,
Yep.
and if there are no other questions from my colleagues, I'd like to make a motion to keep this resolution in committee for further questions to Ms. Churlo until next month.
Happy to second that.
Okay, motion to postpone until next month has been made and properly second. Any questions, any comments?
Yeah, yes, through you, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
And what else are we looking for from Ms. Trullo? Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councilman Rosado.
I received two other questions from two residents and actually a colleague, state rep, who lives in Hartford, as to amending the resolution regarding fees for parking. And the research on other cities where they're not actually charging. So I'd like to ask for postponement until we can clear that up, instead of sending it back to council and then sending it back to committee.
I just want to clarify what Ms. Trullo is supposed to come back and report on next month. So that's basically why I asked that question.
Additional questions on ADA and charges?
Okay.
So what, should I expect something to be sent to me with more questions?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
By Friday.
Excellent. I will research thoroughly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the motion has been made to postpone and properly second. Those in favor of postponing until next month?
Aye.
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 Okay, the ayes have it. Let the record show that item 2.3 will be sent back to, will stay in committee until next month, pending additional information. Now let's move on. If I could find there you go. Let's move on now to item 2.4, Councilwoman Mari Rosado, resolution on promoting awareness of tax abatement provisions for vehicle taxes under Connecticut General Statutes, Title 12, Section 12-124. And we have with us tonight our CFO, Director of Finance, Leanne Rose, to speak about this item. Leanne, the floor is yours.
Sure. Happy to address any questions that the committee members have on this resolution. It was brought forth by Councilwoman Rosado. Unfortunately, our tax collector, Nancy Raish, is on leave until mid-June, so I'm here as a fill-in to answer any questions that any of you may have.
And do we have any questions from any of our colleagues? Any council member with any questions?
I do, Mr. Chair, through you.
Yep, go ahead.
Hi, Leanne.
Hi.
Hi. So the reason I brought this forward is because, as the resolution states, we have a lot of, residents that are not really aware of going through the spot process. And we have, the kind of some high of individuals that actually, drive unregistered vehicles in the city of Hartford. When they can, go through a tax abatement, fill out the application, go in front of the board. And, maybe this is a question for Ms. Nancy and not for you, but why are we not promoting this as much as we promote the elderly tax when it's a benefit to the residents of the city of Hartford?
So I would say that this is a benefit that is given to residents who need it, not necessarily just a benefit that's given out because you meet certain requirements, like the elderly program. So if someone is having difficulty paying their taxes, Councilwoman, they typically will reach out to the tax collector's office and most likely end up in Nancy's office to have a one-on-one conversation with her, or sometimes it's with her deputy tax collector. When they have these types of one-on-one conversations, that's when taxpayers are notified of this abatement, this potential abatement request that they can submit. So I know as part of the resolution, it includes the 4-page or 5-page application process. So typically they're given the application, they know it has to be notified. And then once they submit it, someone on the staff will go through the application. And if there's any information that is missing, they'll reach back out to the taxpayer and say, hey, look, you forgot to include this schedule, or you didn't include a bank statement. So she'll make sure that there's a full package on this abatement submitted to the tax abatement committee. So, you know, the tax collector's goal is to collect as much taxes as she can every fiscal year so that we can support all the expenditures of the general fund. So unless somebody personally requests it, we don't advertise it outside of that.
Are you all set, Councilwoman?
Okay.
Okay.
No, I understand what Leanne is saying. I'm just saying that, you know, when I, you know, especially in the Hispanic community, the Spanish speaking individuals, when I did this through, you know, a PSA, you know, there were a lot of individuals that were never aware of this, you know, especially a lot of single individuals that, you know, did have a job, but were living, are still living, you know, paycheck to paycheck. And it's rather, you know, do I register my car, pay taxes, or put food on the table? And a lot of them work two jobs, and they just didn't know about this. You know, they knew that they could do it with, you know, property taxes. They knew that they could go in front of, you know, a committee if they had, home taxes. But for some reason, they were not aware that they could also do this for their car taxes. And so, you know, if you don't know and no one tells you, you don't even know to look for it because you don't think that there's something like this. And it's actually a state statute, right?
Mm-hmm, correct.
I just don't see a lot of people, you know, at least the individuals that I've spoken to, you know, aware of this unless they've been through it or someone has told them. So I found that interesting that, you know, people were not aware that they had this outlet or whatever you want to call it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you know, for as much as there are, and I'm going to say this, you know, individuals that, you know, might take advantage of the system, there are others that really need it. And it's a big help, you know? So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No problem. Just in response, Councilwoman, there are some restrictions, right? The statute says that the taxpayer has to be poor and unable to pay. And by charter, my position sits on the tax abatement committee for the city. It's the finance director, it's the city treasurer, and it's corporation counsel. So those are the three positions on the committee by charter. In order to come up with a guideline as to what equates to poor and unable to pay to remain in compliance with the statute, the committee determined that the federal poverty level for a family of four is the guideline that we use to make that determination. So sometimes when people come in and they're just having a hard time with, you know, getting caught up on their bills, something happened in their life that put them behind, and now they're trying to catch back up. If they're coming in and they have $100,000 a year salary, but they've fallen on difficult times, by statute, we can't abate that tax because technically they're not poor and unable to pay. So that part of the statute makes things a little tight in order to really determine who is eligible for that abatement. So at times what the committee will do is if they are above the federal poverty level for a family of four, but it may be like $10,000 or $15,000 above that level, then the committee can make a determination as to whether or not to abate fees and interest and allow the taxpayer to still pay the principal. Because in that way, we're not eliminating the tax, but we are eliminating the fees associated with delinquent payment of the taxes. So, you know, it gets to be a little bit difficult with that poor and unable to pay line in the statute.
Okay. Well, thank you for that information and the example you gave about the 100,000 because I was under the understanding that the statute does not mention that it's a for family income. You know, when I looked into it, and maybe it has changed, it stated that an individual can't make over 50,000. So you only can qualify for this if you make, you know, up to no more than $50,000 a year. it didn't say anything about a family composition, but I'll look further into it. Thank you.
Yeah, I can forward you the statute. It doesn't have a dollar line in a dollar amount in the statute. It just says poor and unable to pay. So when you look up just a general Google search on what poor and unable to pay is, it automatically throws you to the federal poverty guidelines. So that's kind of how we got to the federal poverty guidelines as the line in which we can try and make decisions with.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Yes, Councilman Gale.
Thank you. Couple of things come to mind here. The Councilwoman Rosado mentioned the elderly tax credit that's administered by the city. And the difference between the two is in part, not 100%, but in part, the state legislature reimburses the city for some amount of the elderly tax credit. So it's really sort of a state program that says, you know, okay, city, if you have certain people that fall below a certain income level, they can get a credit, and the credits are very specific. And the beauty of that system is that you don't need people in our government sitting and making a decision. It's really much more of a ministerial decision. You either have the income or you don't, and if you fall below a certain line, you get a credit, and the credit is defined in the statute. I think we just changed the credit, in fact, within the last month. So it may very well be that the solution, Councilwoman Rosado, may include having some discussions with our legislature to suggest that the state consider a similar program for motor vehicle taxes. That is a program that sets out a specific dollar sum and then sets out what your specific credit would be by either, you know, percentage or dollar amount. Then that would unburden the city, if you will, or wouldn't burden the city in terms of administering it. We wouldn't have to put an abatement committee together that has to spend, you know, half an hour looking at things. I can see where that does end up constituting a lot of our time in doing this, and it might be far more efficient if there was very specific guidelines. Anyway, I just mentioned all that. Thank you.
Thank you. Assistant Majority Leader Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question to you is for CFO Rawls. Can you tell me, do you know off the top of your head, what is the percentage for the federal poverty guideline? Is it 100%? Sorry, 127%?
It's 100%.
100%? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then do you know exactly how many of city individuals fall within that? You may not even have that data.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can give you an educated guess if that would work. So the abatement committee meets quarterly, so 4 times a year, unless there's a special meeting, and that's typically associated with a housing abatement versus motor vehicle. And each meeting we get anywhere from, 20 to maybe 30, 35 applications for motor vehicle assessments. Probably half are fully abated because they are under the income line. But I could look at maybe like the past year or 2 years of meetings to give you, a more accurate number, if that's helpful.
That'll be helpful, and thank you for that. I don't have a specific timeline on you getting that information back, but thank you for that data.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any more questions to Director Rawls? If not, the chair will entertain a motion at this point.
Motion to postpone.
Motion to postpone on the floor.
Second.
I second.
Motion to postpone, properly second. Those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Aye.
all right, so motion has been approved to postpone this item and keep it here in committee until the next month. Now we're moving on to the last item on the agenda. And my understanding at this point is that we've been asked to postpone this item until the administration gathers a little bit more information regarding this item.
Motion to postpone item in committee pending the administration and their conversation with the zoning department.
Second.
Item have, motion has been made and properly second. Those in favor say aye.
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 Okay.
Aye.
All right, item will be postponed until next month. And seeing that this is the last item on the agenda, I will call for this meeting to be adjourned at this point.
So moved.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
See you at 7.